The SMSF sector has attracted a lot of attention since the federal budget was handed down in May. Peter Burges and Mary Simmons from the SMSF Association are both here with me today to discuss this situation and more. Hello, Mary. Hello, Peter. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Pleasure, Darren. Good to be here.
I'm going to start with you, Peter. A lot's been happening, as I said in the intro. But what would you nominate as the biggest issues the sector has faced in recent months?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, Darren. We've had some, some relatively significant issues that we've had to face over the last few months in our sector. I guess the thing that has concerned us most of all are, situations where we think the SMSF sector is being singled out and targeted unfairly. And if we think back to the compensation scheme of last resort, and there was a lot of conversation, of course, around whether self-managed super funds should pay a levy, and our position on that has been very clear from the outset that we don't support self-managed super funds paying a levy. They are, after all, private investors, retail investors, and we don't think it's appropriate that they should be paying a levy. But the conversation has sort of moved on from there to talk about, well, whether self-managed super funds should actually be eligible to make claims. So SMSF members being eligible to make claims. And, there's been some statements made that the self-managed super funds shouldn't be eligible to make a compensation claim, and we're very strongly opposed to that. We think that's inappropriate. That if an SMSF member suffers a financial loss as a result of the misconduct of someone else, then they should have a right to make a claim. If they have an unpaid AFCA determination, they should be treated the same way as any other retail investor. So we've come out strongly opposed to that position that SMSF investors shouldn't be eligible to make a claim. And I think in more recent times, we've seen limited recourse borrowing arrangements, of course, in the limelight. And again, we feel this is an area where the SMSF structure has been unfairly targeted. The concerns that were raised by the Greens around property spruiking and high pressure sales tactics, if that is the concern, if that's what they're worried about, well, then we need to address that behaviour. And not make changes to the legislation and reduce investment flexibility just so the government can secure passage of their federal budget measures. So we've had a bit to say about that as well. Let's target that misconduct. And the government has already announced a review around lead generators and how to curb lead generators and high pressure sales tactics. We need that review to run its course before we start making decisions like we've seen recently to ban residential property, in an SMSF through an LRBA. So they've been the big ticket items, I guess, Darren, that have kept us occupied in recent times.
Well, they are really big tickets, and you make some really good points there. Specifically, what has been the SMSF Association's response and reaction and proactivity in responding to some of these measures?
Yeah, look, as I said, we've taken a pretty hard position or a firm position opposing the levies or the compensation scheme levy from self-managed super funds, and also in terms of the limited recourse borrowing arrangements. We were disappointed to see the government give in to the demands of the Greens. These arrangements, the ability for investors to be able to borrow to invest in a residential property, for example, through a self-managed super fund, have been in place now for almost 2 decades. It's been a very settled piece of policy. And as I said, if the concern is misconduct and property spruiking and high pressure sales tactics, which appears to be what the Greens are mostly concerned about off the back of the budget changes, which of course won't apply to superannuation funds, and the concern and the fear that we may see property spruiking and people being encouraged to set up a self-managed super fund to borrow to invest in residential property. If they're concerned about that behaviour, well, then let's address that behaviour and not make changes to the superannuation structure, the self-managed super fund structure, because the self-managed super fund structure is not the problem. And that's the same with the compensation scheme of last resort. In all of these cases that we've seen go on before the compensation scheme involving self-managed super funds, it's not the self-managed super fund that's failed. It's the advice that's been provided to the trustees that's led to product failure that's been the problem. So let's not focus on the wrong problem here. Let's make sure we focus on what the real cause of this misconduct is.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair position to take, actually. Mary, I'm going to turn my attention to you now. We're leading into July, and that means the SMSF Association Technical Summit is just weeks away. What were the main focal points for this year's event?
This year's event was really kind of built around the simple reality, and that is that SMSF professionals are dealing with the major reforms, some of which, Peter's just gone through. There's a lot of complex rules across a multitude of different acts and how they all interact. And at the same time, they're dealing with really complex day-to-day client issues. So, when we take all of that into account, our job was to make sure that the summit could address all of those things together. And there is a lot of reform underway, and it's really important for our members not to rely on traditional strategies and just to assume that the outcome's going to be the same. So kind of like a little bit of a takeaway is if you're working off an old strategy playbook, it's time to retest some of those strategies, and the Tech Summit will bring that to the forefront. So absolutely, Division 296 will be one of the headline discussion points, but that does have flow-on effects, and we'll be looking at all of those from contributions to estate planning, plus much more. So
That's great. That's great. Now, is there something specific you're particularly excited about that has been an addition to this year's program?
I get excited about all of the programs that I'm involved in, but look, Tech Summit's quite special in the sense that we really wanted to address that real world impact, and we're coming at it with having SMSF experts all throughout the 2 days from very different areas in the industry, all bringing a different lens. And it's really important to acknowledge that advice doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? And we wanted the program to really reflect that. And the strength of what we're doing this year is that we want our program to help our delegates connect the dots. So it's not just about understanding each of the issues in isolation. The real value, the takeaway for our delegates will be understanding the interaction between those issues and not just the issues themselves. So that gets me really excited. And that's also what I feel generates a lot of discussion. So that's why the Tech Summit is important, because it is workshop based and it allows for that discussion and engagement.
Yeah, really important points there. Now, we know that practitioners love to come back to the Tech Summit year after year. And for those repeat attendees, what new things can they maybe look forward to this year?
Okay, so one of the new things that we have done this year is we've introduced mini workshops. So that's really just improving on what we know works really well with the summit format. And that's because the workshops, they're designed to be highly practical, very case-based, and more interactive for delegates. So this year we've built more engagement. We'll have polling, discussions, and we just want delegates thinking through real scenarios. So everything will be case-based, rather than just listening to that technical content. So, and that really matters for this audience because they are highly experienced. So we want them to come along, test ideas, challenge some of their assumptions, and just work through the kind of situations that they genuinely encounter in practice on a day-to-day basis.
Now, you've mentioned a lot of topics, obviously, that will be covered during the sessions at the Tech Summit. But is there one sort of area or one sort of issue that you think will generate more interest or more discussion than others?
Honestly, for me, I have to say all of them. But that's because the program has been built in such a way that it is around real scenarios and real technical pressure points. They're not hypothetical issues. They are real live case studies that our presenters deal with on a day-to-day basis. But obviously, Division 296 will absolutely generate a lot of discussion, and it's important to recognise that it's reshaping strategic conversations well beyond just what it is as a standalone tax measure. So it will impact on contributions, retirement strategies, death benefit planning, and all those other strategic decisions professionals are making for clients right now.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mary. So I'd just like to thank Peter and Mary, both of you, for your time today.
Darren?
Thank you.
The SMSF Association Technical Summit 2026 is taking place at the Sydney Masonic Centre across the 29th and the 30th of July. To find out more about the event and register, please refer to the details you can see on your screen right now. There is so much happening in the sector at the moment. I can't wait to discuss it with you at the Technical Summit.